one of your 20 books, did we decide? I think it's 20.
It's about that.
It's called Silver Era Secrets. What is the Silver Era?
Well, the Silver Era is a term used to describe the period in bodybuilding between 1940 and 1959, where you had people like Steve Reeves, Reg Park, uh, Eric Peterson. They were dominant, and Vince Gironda as well. Vince Gironda was very active in bodybuilding after that period as a coach and a trainer. He was competing during those years, and it was the time when steroids hadn't emerged onto the scene in a big way yet. Anecdotal reports are that they were circulating, and yes, there were some bodybuilders who were using some, but they were still predominantly in the domain of elite athletics. And even then, if you look at it properly, a lot of it's in the Soviet Union. The whole story of how steroids came to America is very interesting, and I won't go into it now because I don't know, I can't recall enough of the information off the top of my head. Um, so, but the other cool thing about it is that gyms looked like gyms. So before the silver era came the bronze era, which is George Hackenschmidt and what's his name, Sandow, the guy whose likeness is the Mr. Olympia statue. The people who win that, yeah. But the thing is, their workout routines and are not strictly applicable to modern man, because the gyms that they trained in don't really look like gyms. There was lots of weird and wonderful kind of Victorian era contraptions that were very ineffective in really kind of primitive weightlifting machines. But like, they didn't even have flat benches to do bench presses on. They do something called a floor press.
A bit like the machines we saw on the Titanic on that.
Yes, exactly like that. So you
Yeah.
had like the exercise camel. They
Yeah.
had an exercise camel on the stuff like that. That they were primitive, and but also lots of gymnastic equipment as well. So things like gymnastic rings. Obviously, the lack of flat benching meant that everything had to be taken from the floor. Even like squat racks and squat stands weren't standard. So you have something called a Steinborn squat. I believe that's what it's called, a Steinborn squat, where you basically put a barbell up on its end, then work your way underneath it, then squat it, and then put it back down in a very gentlemanly fashion.
Wow.
Thing lifts like two hands anyhow. So
Yeah.
getting weights overhead, typically a barbell and a kettlebell. I think the heaviest two hands anyhow was over 400 pounds. Um, it,
Bell and a kettlebell.
yeah.
Wow.
Yes, yeah. You do something called a bent press to put that overhead, and then you have a kettlebell in the other hand generally. Obviously, those are quite extreme feats of athleticism, to put it mildly. And the modern person, modern man, is in no way coordinated, flexible, resilient enough to even begin training in those using those methods, because the lifestyle's not conducive to it. You need to have a very high baseline level of physical performance before you can even consider attempting to learn how to do a bench press, for example. I dabbled with trying to learn one just out of interest when I was doing some research into writing of Silver Secrets, actually, learning how to do a bench press just to satisfy my own curiosity. And it was a very unpleasant process, to put it mildly. I never really managed it with a barbell. I could do it with a kettlebell, but not with a barbell. And I would say for a 30, I'm probably about 33 at the time, wasn't I? But year old man, I'm up there in the top 5-10% of kind of fitness levels and strength levels, and even it was too much of a challenge even for me. So that's why I tend to focus on the silver era and the bronze era, because as I say, in the silver era you had weightlifting machines that looked like weightlifting machines that we have today. You had squat racks, benches to do bench presses on, and the training programs as well look like the standard stuff that people are prescribed in gyms up and down the country, by personal trainers and things like that. What's very different are the attitudes and approaches to training. The idea that the lower frequency training, kind of 2 or 3 days a week, full body routines, focusing in on the basics, sets of 8 to 12 reps, that sort of stuff is massively emphasized in the silver era. And a lot of that's been lost in the intervening half century, because of the way that steroids changed the game so much. And the problem with steroids is their use is so widespread, and the way that you train while taking steroids can be so very different from the basics that it just pollutes the discourse, really. So Anyway, does that answer your question? It was a bit of a ramble, wasn't it?
No, it does. And what defines the silver era look?
Oh, so silver era looks. I would say the thing that defines it is how attainable it is. I'm not saying you're going to like train, do 3 full body workouts a week for 2 years. You're going to look like Steve Reeves. That's obviously not going to happen. Guy had once in a generation genetics.
Yeah.
But if you look at the people who were in competition with Steve Reeves, or you look at photographs of bodybuilding competitions from the 40s and 50s,
Yeah.
you look at the physiques and you're like, yeah, the guy's muscular, the guy looks good, but I could achieve that because they weren't ripped to the bone, shredded. Like Vince Gironda, Vince Gironda was like the first guy to get like super ripped, and one of the big criticisms that he would get was that he was too lean. They didn't like his look; he was too lean. And even then, he's not massively lean by today's kind of bodybuilding and even fitness influencer standards. Um, so, because a lot of that's pharmaceutically aided, isn't it? Let's be honest. So the attainability is what makes it distinct, but other things as well. The striving for proportionality, not just size. So
Yeah.
the circumference of the neck, the upper arm, and the calf all being broadly the same. Yeah, that's drawn from the classical Greek sculptures. Um,
Not these giant shoulders,
but
arms
yeah,
that you
yeah,
see in
yeah, and
modern
very little
weights.
chicken legs and things. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but also um, the focus on the narrow waist and the V taper, which you train in the Silvera style, and you're a woman.
Mm.
I checked,
Yeah,
and
thanks.
but training in that way gives you the body naturally conforms to an ideal form when you train in this way, doesn't it? Like so,
Yeah.
you're not jacked up in the shoulder or anything, but you do have nice broad shoulders and a narrow waist as a result of your training. And then obviously, you've got your womanly proportions with your hips and your lower body and stuff. So
Mm.
it yeah, it's a healthy, natural, and real. I would say
Yeah.
is the kind of thing that defines it.
And you mentioned a couple of names. Who are the big names of the silver era?
Biggest name is I'd say there's some debate as to who the biggest name is. So is it really Steve Reeves, who is that's arguably the greatest natural physique, i.e. drug-free physique of all time. You got Reg Park as well. Reg Park very famously was the mentor to Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's the guy who inspired Arnold to not only become a bodybuilder but also an actor.
Yeah.
He was very famous. So was Steve Reeves actually. He was one time the highest paid actor in Europe, I believe, doing all these sword and sandal movies. Um, and yeah, Reg Park being the other one.
Mm.
Reg Park was my main influence in my early years, but I've since become I've since resonated more strongly with Steve Reeves' teachings for various reasons. Other people to look at's an Olympic athlete guy called Tommy Kono, who's a weightlifter. I think he was Olympic gold medalist. I may be wrong there, but I know he was a very, very accomplished weightlifter who was also a bodybuilder. Looked really good. But in those days, the guys were all multi skilled. Um, Tommy Kono, Eric Peterson, who's a very criminally unknown chap who was doing high intensity training before, like Mike Mensa was. Mike Mensa was a child, if perhaps not even born yet.
Mm.
So there's him. Yeah, those are kind of your big four in my opinion. There's George Eifferman. Um, who else? Clancy Ross, who inspired the look of modern day Superman when Superman was redesigned after World War II, allegedly, apocryphally. I've only found like one source on the internet for this, but the guy who redesigned Superman used his body and his look as an inspiration for that.
Cool.
So yeah,
So you alluded to it earlier as well about this transition from a whole body way of thinking about training a
holistic approach.
a bro split, and obviously that
Yeah.
was informed by the bursting of steroids onto the scene. Would you
Yeah,
say?
so when you abuse performance enhancing drugs, they allow you to fundamentally do a lot more work. That's fundamentally what they facilitate is
Yeah.
the ability to do a lot more. That's a massively reductive argument that I've just made,
Mm.
by the way. But for the purpose of the podcast, what they do is they allow you to do a lot more work. So when you do a lot more work, that obviously gives you a lot more options on the training front to take advantage of that. Yeah.
Mm.
So that's when you see things like, all right, if you read Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding, for example, and you look at some of the programs in there, the guys training hard and heavy twice a day, 6 days a week is one of the routines in there.
Yeah.
With sort of like 40 odd sets of workout. You can't do that without drugs. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. Then there's also things like intensity techniques as well. Again, leveraging that enhanced recovery capacity,
Yeah.
which they and they do have application for a lifter who doesn't abuse drugs, but you just got to be really careful with how you do it.
And so, why for your average man on the street who has a job is a body weight routine,
Body weight,
a, a full body,
full body.
arguably better in your.
Well, the average man on the street's not very fit, whether or not he wants to admit it. You know, he's not an athlete. Even if he trains, even in training, lifting weights and running and stuff for a few years, he's not anywhere near the strength performance levels of a of someone who would be looking at a more complicated routine than that. I suspect he also has a life outside of the gym. If he doesn't, if he's like some loser PT or fitness influencer who lives in the gym all day, then obviously he can get away with more. But if you've got a life outside the gym, it's all you're getting the most quality work done while still allowing yourself to live a life outside of training and not fall off the wagon because what you're doing is unsustainable, either
Yeah.
because it disrupts your life outside of training or it just
Too
exceeds your
physically
capacity to recover
demanding.
from it. Yeah, so that's why he wants to look at that. Also, another thing that I'm fond of saying is that strength is the foundation of all athletic ability. I didn't come up with that. That's me shamelessly stealing from a guy called Mark Ripperto, the author of Starting Strength. And everyone ought to be having a program in the weight room oriented towards building strength. Full body routine is the best for that because they allow you to do some form of squatting, some form of hinging, some form of vertical and horizontal pushing, and obviously pulling as well. Every time you train, so you're doing that 3 times a week rather than just once. So obviously lifting weights is a skill, and you don't get better at a skill by doing it once. They're not doing it again for 10 days, do you?
No.
So you're doing that 2 or 3 times a week, every week.
Yeah.
You become much more proficient. Weight goes on the bar. As weight goes on the bar, you become better at everything that you do, and you also become more muscular and you start looking better.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any more questions.
Oh, good.
Is there anything else you wanted to add about the silver era? I know it's been
No,
quite.
I just think that anyone who listens to this and still listening would be an idiot if they didn't buy Silver Era Secrets. I was going to correct you at the start, but I'll correct you now. It's not a book; it's 3 handbooks delivered once a month, and then there's obviously coaching input alongside that. Anyone who is interested in that could go to philtimon.co.uk/program, spelled PROGRAMME, the English way, not program,
Yeah.
like the Americans spell it. And they can check it out. I think it's like 1,200 quid, isn't it, for the 3 months?
Yeah.
So it's not like the most expensive online PT program in the world. It's not the cheapest either, but I think it's fair for what you get. I was just chatting to a guy who did it last year actually, and he was telling me he still has his nose in the handbooks to this very day. He just voice noted me words to that effect this morning. So yeah, it's a good thing. But if you're not quite ready to reach into your pocket and give me some of your hard-earned money, you can absolutely give me your email address and allow me to email you to teach you more about getting strong and in shape the Phil Timon way. You do that by typing the URL that's on your screen, philtimon.co.uk, into your browser, and then following the instructions to subscribe to the newsletter. To give you a hint, there's a big green button that says subscribe to newsletter. You click that, it takes you to the page. And I'll email you every day and teach you stuff. And if you want to do the YouTube thing, like the video and subscribe to the channel, because 12 subscribers makes me feel sad, then that's great too. But better to subscribe to the emails, to be honest. Yeah, because I'll probably get binned off of YouTube before long because of having the wrong opinion or whatever. All right, that'll do for today. Speak next time.